Hi, I'm Dan Cortopassi. Welcome to Layout Building. As a lot of you are probably aware, I've been selling off some surplus trains on eBay. Some of you have bought some of those, and thank you very much. I appreciate it. What you may not know is that Nicole and I have also been going through just general stuff and finding stuff to donate, throw away, etc., just to do some spring cleaning and kind of streamline a little bit. And anyway, in the process of doing that, I came across this pad of paper which has a bunch of old track plans on it that I drew many years ago. So I thought it might be interesting to go through some of these as kind of case studies, because I thought, this was done a long time ago and I didn't know as much about what I wanted out of a layout. And it's kind of interesting to see where my head was at that time. And I just thought it might be interesting to take a look at them. So for today, I'm going to take a look at the one on top and tell you why I think it's interesting. So I thought this time we could take a look at my first N-scale North Coast Railroad that I built a long time ago. So I've got two pieces of paper here in my hand, and this actually represents the first incarnation of my North Coast Railroad idea. And if you've followed any of the Siren Creek build, you may notice a theme with a little town with a harbor. A different track arrangement, of course, but it's kind of, I was going for the same vibe, if that makes sense. Anyway, I have two versions of it because I wanted to show both because just to kind of give some context of what I'd intended. In fact, let's just put these together because I think it kind of makes more sense if you could see this part. So what I had, I was living with my parents at the time and I was going to school part-time and working part-time. So I had a limited amount of time for model trains, but I was still doing it. And my bedroom at my parents' house was about 10 feet by 10 feet square, give or take a couple. And if you can picture, this is one wall, this is an exterior wall, and then in the corner there was a window, and in this corner there was a window, and then this part of the layout would have been over my bed, over here. So this part actually got built. This over here never happened, okay? But I wanted to talk about it a little bit because I thought it was kind of interesting. This is basically, if you can see this, it's a continuous run plan here, and it looks like I had some provision for a helix, so maybe I was going to go for a double deck. I don't remember now. But anyway, it's got staging in the back and basically a loop, and then a little Y with the passing siding, and then the main goes out here to this other part. So this is actually not a bad plan. As a single track main line, you could actually operate on this and, bring a train out of staging. It could even meet another train going the other way with the passing siding. I had a little town here. And you could turn a train on a Y if you wanted. So there's actually a fair amount of potential with this. I'm not sure what I was going for with this later version that I drew. If you can see this, it's like it's a little more convoluted. I think I gave up on the continuous run idea, and the main line kind of comes here, loops around, and ends up in a yard with an engine terminal. And I had some, I guess, planning for narrow gauge going on here too, with some dual gauge, and then this is like a dual gauge line that connects to nothing. So this is obviously not finished. But what I thought was interesting about this part of the plan is that, remember, this was like the 80s, okay? So this was a long time ago, and I have theme, point-to-point format on 2 levels, shelf-type construction, operation-oriented but not over-tracked, meaning I didn't want too much track. I said this will be no problem because I'm making my own switches. I was actually doing all hand-laid track at the time with Code 55 rail. And then I said command control should be strongly considered. This was before DCC really was a thing. So even back then I was thinking along those lines. And then I didn't want a main control panel. Everything should be local. So it was basically a walk around kind of idea. So I thought that was kind of interesting, design concepts for the plan. So this is the part that actually got built. And this is about 7 feet long and about 18 inches wide. And N scale, if I didn't already mention that. The main line comes in here and then splits. And this part goes into these 2 tracks here, which was a passenger station. I had platforms built, and I was working on a little scratch-built station building. And then this other branch goes over here. There's a little runaround track, and then there's some industries. There's this track that goes over to this wharf across the street. Then there's a switchback here that goes to some building flats over on this side, and then in this direction over to a junkyard. And I actually still have some pieces of the junkyard in terms of like the fence that I built for it, and I think this little structure right here. So I might try to use those on the Siren Creek somewhere. In fact, there's a lot of similarities between this and the Siren Creek in the sense that it's a harborside town. Nothing like, I mean, the track plan is nothing like the Siren Creek, but just in concept, a little seaside town with storefronts and things. And then this other trackage here, this stuff that's marked with little hash marks, was actually a trolley line. So I didn't have narrow gauge on this one like I do on the Siren Creek, but I had a trolley line that basically was just a big loop. And then it split into two tracks on the main streets here and then back into one. It shows it going off the edge here, but these were actually dummy tracks. They didn't work. There was a little switch here, and this track went into this tunnel in this hill, the idea that it was going somewhere else, although it didn't really go anywhere except to the edge. In terms of like scenery, I actually did build this hill and the tunnel portal. I had a start on the harbor, although it wasn't anything more than plywood water. I did build a little seawall out of doweling, wood dowels to look like pilings. But that was about as far as that got. I never built the little structures that were supposed to go here. And I never built any of the boats or the docks or anything that were supposed to go in here. I did start building a couple of these buildings, but I didn't get many done before I ended up having to abandon the layout. Basically, I was working on this during a 3-year period when I was going to college and working, and then my parents ended up getting divorced, and I moved, and it was a whole thing. So anyway, I ended up having to abandon the project after a while, although I did end up taking it with me and carrying it around for a while. It was actually split down the middle, so there's actually 2 sections that would join, and I did split it a couple times to move it, but it wasn't like easily done, so it wasn't something I wanted to do a lot of that, do it a lot. So this isn't a horrible plan in a sense. Like, I think there's good switching opportunities with the runaround track and, the line coming in here and a couple of industries to spot cars. Although I don't think I would do this again where I'm putting the track right behind a bunch of structures, because this would be really difficult to see. So, and if you're trying to reach over it to uncouple cars and things, it would have been really difficult to actually make use of this when everything was down. I think these thicker things here were uncoupling magnet locations. I'm not really sure about that now because this was a lot of years ago, but I think that's probably what I was planning there. I even had some little gaps because this was DC at the time, so I had some little gaps so I could control this section of track separately from the station. The trolley tracks actually worked, although the equipment that I was using on it wasn't great. I was using Bachmann trolleys, which had some pretty bad mechanisms. They just didn't run very well. They looked kind of neat, but didn't run very well. I had a PCC car and a couple of other older looking trolleys that I custom painted in my North Coast, or a version of a North Coast paint scheme for trolleys. So I still have the trolleys. I was thinking that at some point it might be cool, if I ever feel ambitious, to try to repower them with Kato or Tomix mechanisms or something like that. There's a lot of chassis you can get from Japan that I think would work well in that kind of a situation. These were super tight little curves here. I don't know that those were too practical, although the cars did get around them. The issues I had were more about running qualities. But I was trying to make it realistic, like super tight curves of street cars. and that kind of thing. I even drew a little track diagram. This is kind of flipped from the way it was on the layout, but it shows, I basically came up with a scheme to insulate the turnouts and then, power all the other pieces of track. And these are actually single point turnouts, just like you would see in a real streetcar, track, which they did a lot. They would just have a single point and the other would just be open. And I guess that worked okay for streetcars. It seemed to work okay in N-scale too, although on my version of this, I froze these in one position since these tracks running off the edge didn't need to work. So it wasn't really necessary to have these actually be operable. The one that went into the tunnel did actually work though. So, and this worked as far as that goes. I mean, there was a lot of stalling and stuff, but I think that was more to do with the equipment than the actual, trackage. So unfortunately, I don't have a lot of photos of this, but I did find this one, which is a picture of the intersection where the streetcar tracks come through. And this was before I paved the track. As you can see, I glued the Code 55 rail directly to plastic. And you can also see that the rails are doubled. What I was trying to do was simulate that kind of street trackage where they have the kind of inner rail that keeps the pavement away, I guess, from the main rail. It's not really a full rail. It's more like almost like you turned a piece of rail on its side and there's a webbing kind of a thing. But I didn't really know how to do that, so I just doubled the rails. And I started to pave it with some cinder ballast, some black cinder ballast, but I didn't like the look, so I ended up getting rid of that. And I did eventually pave the streets, but I don't remember exactly what I used. I think it might have been plaster. And I did actually do that and then paint it at some point, but I don't have photos of that, unfortunately. So I never actually got around to doing any of this stuff, but I was actually planning to use overhead wires, and I was trying to figure out how to make working trolley poles in N-scale, and also these little pans that would be where the crossings and turnouts were, so that the trolley poles could go through. And I don't know if this would have worked or not. I think traction modelers do sometimes do stuff like this with a little brass plate that's kind of folded so it's got a little lip on each side. It keeps the trolley pole contained, but how it would have worked in N-scale, I don't really know. So to go back to this for a minute, this was actually a double shelf. If you can picture, there was the lower shelf where all the track was laid, and then there was a built-in backdrop, and then there was an upper shelf that actually had lighting built in on the underside. So it was kind of like a little shadow box kind of diorama effect that I actually really liked. And the whole thing was like hung on the wall. So there were no legs. It just was hanging on the wall over my bed. And I slept under it and it never fell on me. So I think I did a good job with that. Because it was actually heavy enough that you wouldn't want it to fall on you. You know what I mean? So, it worked out pretty well. And, interestingly enough, what I ended up doing with this is, as I was getting into HO, I eventually tore all this up and turned it into an HO scale switching layout, which I also don't, unfortunately, have really much in the way of pictures. I think I might have one or two somewhere, but I'm not sure where they are. Wasn't as big into photography back then, unfortunately, so I just didn't take a lot of pictures of that stuff. But anyway, I thought it was kind of interesting just to talk about this, since this is actually something that did, for a while anyway, exist. So this is an alternate, older version of the plan that I drew. Still has the passenger station, which is a little shorter, and still has a trolley line, although it's a little weird because there's the loop and then it splits into two tracks, but one of the tracks goes out here to the wharf and then you have to come back. So I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, which is probably why I ended up not doing this. Then the freight part of it comes over here, and I think this was a little runaround. It's not drawn very well. And then the junkyard track and a track along the back of the wharf, this looks like a super tight curve there, and then looks like another track onto the wharf here. So just a little bit different. I think I decided on the other plan because it gave me more room. This was a lot of water, you know, which is kind of, I think I was trying to leave room for some kind of a ship model, but I never ended up doing that. So one of the weaknesses of this plan is that because this splits right here, you really couldn't get, this is actually, it looks longer, I think, than it really was. The turnout, I think, was actually closer to the edge. So because I never built the connector track that would have gone, you know, over that way, there was really no way to take even a single locomotive out of here and then run it back over here. So it really isn't that practical of a plan in a lot of ways. So that's something you know, if I were to do something like this again, I would probably rethink a lot of it and do something different. I still like the idea of it, but I think it could be arranged better. So if you like this kind of content and you want to see me do some more of it, let me know, because I got plenty of track plans. Some of them are from a long time ago and some of them are more recent. I kind of think it's interesting in a way just to kind of see what I was thinking at the time and to go over, like, you know, why I was doing what I was doing, what the room was like, what I was trying to design the track plan for, etc. Even when stuff doesn't get built, sometimes the designs can be useful as you know, just ideas, and see what works and what might not have worked so well, and just to talk about it, and maybe, who knows, maybe someone would get inspired from it. So anyway, just let me know if you like this and want to see more of it. I appreciate everybody who's supporting the channel and watching, and if you like this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching.